In today's FPL stat pack, we're going to be taking a look at the key metrics and data to help you make the best decisions ahead of game week 33. Starting off the video, we're going to take a look at which players have been performing the best over the past 5 game weeks. Now, it isn't an indicator of which players should do well in the future, but I think it is potentially worth taking a look at which players have been doing exceptionally well, and maybe there are a few anomalies in here that potentially we should be looking to identify with our transfers this week. Obviously, the top 2, I think it's pretty self-explanatory. A lot of people own them, especially with the double game weeks coming up for both of these sides in 35 and 37. Definitely should be on people's radars. There's a reason they're up here as well. Both players are absolutely fantastic, and I feel for the next few weeks, especially if you're on the free hit strategy for game week 34, should be essential players in your side, and definitely when they do have these double game weeks coming up, could offer themselves up as potential captaincy material. Now, there are some interesting names on this list over the past 5 game weeks. Chris Wood and Bruno Fernandes make it in here as some of the top scoring players over the past 5. Now, Chris Wood, 4 goals for him. Unfortunately, there aren't any double game weeks coming up for Nottingham Forest, and maybe that has potentially been a little bit of an oversight by, FPL content creators and kind of the community in general, that we've been so focused on these double game weeks that we've not been identifying players like Chris Wood, who have been absolutely slapping for Nottingham Forest over the past few weeks. And, Forest fixtures, they are pretty decent. I feel like if you do need an enabler, maybe you want to switch away from Muniz with Fulham's fixtures potentially taking a little bit of a dip. I think Chris Wood would be a really nice, potential pickup because he's been doing extremely well. It's a little bit surprising to see Chris Wood on this list. And I think, like I said, maybe sometimes we get kind of tunnel vision and just focus on the double game weeks, and maybe we should be looking at players that are doing extremely well with positive single game week fixtures rather than just focusing on those double game weeks. So just something to potentially take forward into the rest of the season and going forward with our FPL planning. Alexander Isak's on here as well. I think he's a great pickup, especially if you're on the 34 free hit strategy. He has really, really good fixtures with Newcastle coming up. Not in game week 33, they do take on Tottenham, but you still feel he could get something out of that, especially with the positive record that he has been putting up over the past few weeks. And then Bruno Fernandes, again, a very interesting player, one that has been slightly on my radar with Manchester United's strong fixtures post game week 34 and with their double game week in 37. So he might, if he continues this form, put himself into the contention of potentially being one of those players that I do go for game week 37. And maybe with you guys as well, just kind of keep it in the back of your mind. He's been doing quite well. Let's see how he gets on over the next few game weeks. And if he's continuing to perform like this, he could be a huge differential for you and your side come the end of the season. Moving on to team data over the past 5 game weeks. On the top, we do have the worst defences in the league according to XG conceded. And on the bottom, we have the best attacks according to XG. Now, these team datas are kind of correlated over the past 5 game weeks. Some teams have obviously played more games due to the blanks and doubles and all of that good stuff. But we're going to start off with the negatives. It is the XG conceded. These are probably defences we should be looking to target over the next few weeks. Now, there's some interesting teams on here. Manchester United over the past 5 game weeks have the worst XG conceded in the Premier League. So it does maybe, raise a few questions. A lot of us are potentially looking at bringing in Onana as well with their fixtures coming up. Maybe he's not the best pickup in the world, especially with them conceding so many chances. I know as well they've been conceding a hell of a lot of shots. I think they're 17th or 18th for shots conceded in the whole of the Premier League season, not just over the past 5 game weeks. I think there's some very kind of predictable teams down here as well. Luton and Burnley, we always know that we should be looking to target these teams because defensively, throughout the course of the season, they have been pretty miserable. As of West Ham, to be honest, I think arguably they've got a little bit fortunate at times, again conceding a lot of XG. So if you do have a player playing against West Ham, it's probably worth gambling on them as well, because look at the XG conceded. They're not doing great defensively over the past 5. And then Aston Villa, a very interesting one on this list. Now obviously they conceded 3 against Brentford. They've got some difficult fixtures coming up as well, so maybe if you do have Villa assets, especially in the defensive area, it probably is worth potentially looking to take them out due to their poor fixtures, no doubles coming up, and poor defensive data to go with that. Moving on to the flip side, we're going to look at the best kind of attacks in the league over that period. Liverpool, by a country mile, are clear for XG in terms of creativity over the past 5 game weeks and have played 1 game less than most of the teams on this list. So definitely, if we're looking to load up, maybe you're not on the 34 free hit, or even if you are, it's probably worth loading up on Liverpool attackers rather than defenders, with them creating such good XG. The likes of Salah, Darwin Núñez and Luis Diaz are my popular picks for me, the ones that I would be looking to target. Interestingly, Spurs and Chelsea on here. Again, both of these teams got double game weeks coming up, so probably worth investing heavily in towards the attack rather than the defence for both of these sides. And then the last two, very, very interesting. Now, Bournemouth have played the most games on this list, so that probably explains why they're a little bit higher than most teams on here. But Fulham, very good attacking wise. You know, the first 25 minutes against Newcastle, I thought they were going to score, to be honest. So maybe if you've held Núñez for this long, it might be worth potentially keeping him, because they still are putting in some really good attacking data, creating plenty of opportunities and getting the XG. Maybe a little bit unfortunate that they've not come away with more Premier League points over the past few weeks. So I definitely think it is worth keeping the likes of Núñez, maybe if you've got no other alternatives, because they are creating good underlying data to go with that. And maybe if you've got a defender up against Fulham, it might be worth a little bit more consideration around some of the other players you've got with their fixtures. Finishing up the team data section is going to be the predicted clean sheet percentage for this week. As you can see, there is a huge clear favourite. It is going to be Manchester City, then Arsenal and Liverpool in joint second with a 50% probability of a clean sheet. So maybe if you've kept Bradley, definitely worth it. If you're on the Arsenal double up and you may be a little bit hesitant with them taking on a strong Villa side, the probability suggests it's a 50-50 kind of split. So you probably are worth playing both Villa defenders at that point. If you've maybe got Reguilon as well, he's probably worth a shout this week. Same with the Chelsea boys, as they have 38% probability of a clean sheet. In terms of defences, we should be looking to avoid this week. Definitely any Luton, definitely any Crystal Palace. Interesting, 9% for Aston Villa. Obviously, we spoke about their poor defensive data in the last section, conceding a lot of XG conceded. On this list as well, 9% probability. So if you do have the likes of Pau Torres, Ezri Konsa, probably worth dropping them this game week. Interestingly, Tottenham all the way down with 20% as well. So the likes of Ped Porro and the Doja, you probably are going to be looking for an attacking return from them again, which isn't always the most sustainable way, rather than the clean sheet. Moving on to individual player data for game week 33. Now we're going to start off with expected points. This model should be a good indicator of who you should be captaining this game week, or any potential transfers for game week 33. Interestingly, Palmer top with 8.1. You would imagine it would have been a City boy with those taking on Luton at home this game week. But you do feel with Champions League football in midweek, some rotation as well from Pep Guardiola we saw this weekend with Phil Foden not playing. I think that has probably degraded their kind of point scoring or potential or expected point scoring ability, and that has probably been kind of impacted the model, and that is why they are a little bit lower than Cole Palmer. So some interesting choices for captain this week. Obviously Haaland probably going to be the #1 captain with 7.9 points predicted for him. Interestingly though, my two favourites at the moment are Salah and Haaland. We will come on to talk about those two in a little while, kind of having a little bit of a breakdown of their individual kind of weeks. Interestingly, some other strong players on here. Luis Diaz, I think if you are on the non-34 free hit, could be a great pickup this week. Crystal Palace, 6.1 predicted points for him this game week. In fine form as well. Scored in the derby against Manchester United. The double coming up in 34. Only 11.5% owned, so could get you some huge rank gains if he continues this form into this game week against Crystal Palace, who in their form, they've not been doing that great, to be be honest, they've not been in the finest of form, so you could see Liverpool go in there and doing exceptionally well, and with a double game week coming up, I think he could be a great pickup. My only concern with him, and obviously Salah and other Liverpool assets, is European football on Thursday, but I still think Luis Diaz will start the weekend and will probably score, to be honest. The form that he's in, the predicted points as well. Interestingly, Martin Odegaard is on here with 6.3, no sign of Saka, so maybe again this model is taken into kind of the consideration of the expected minutes. Saka did come off early in the game against Brighton at the weekend. Champions League football up for Arsenal as well, so you would imagine there might be some rotation coming into effect this week. Moving on to the chance of scoring percentages. Now, Haaland is clearly leading the way with this one, 71%, which is astronomical for him, nearly as high as his ownership as well. Some interesting names on this list: Tony, Solanke, and Mbeumo, Højlund, some definitely interesting names with high probability of scoring this game week. Obviously, Brentford ones, I feel it is kind of predictable. They are playing one of the worst defences in the league, but as you can see over the past 5 game weeks, there has been an improvement defensively from Sheffield United, and I feel like you can even see that when you watch their performances. There has been that uptick in terms of defensive data and in terms of overall performances. So maybe if you have the likes of Mbeumo or Tony, it's probably not going to be an easy task as kind of the model is suggesting, because I think Sheffield United have improved defensively. They're not on the bottom 5 list for probably the first time this season. So I do think it might be a little bit of a more difficult task, but Ivan Toney and Mbeumo still on this list. Interestingly, Dominic Solanke on here with 43%. Now, a lot of people do own Dominic Solanke. I'm one of the people myself, and I was thinking about, dropping him this game week. Manchester United, not the easiest of fixture, not a game I could 100% call which way it's going to go, but with them having the worst XG conceded over the past 5 game weeks, I think this model has taken that into consideration as well, and Solanke has a 43% probability of scoring against Manchester United. So I think I will be playing Dominic Solanke this game week. Some other interesting ones: Højlund on here. I don't personally think he's going to go and score this week. He's looked very, very sluggish, so probably one I would be looking to avoid, but the rest of the names I think are pretty self-explanatory. And finishing up today's video, I thought we would take a look at my favourite captaincy options for this week. This is the past 5 game week data. As you can see, Salah's absolutely dominating it over the past 5, isn't he, to be honest? He's miles clear of Erling Haaland. Now, it doesn't mean Erling Haaland isn't a good captaincy option. It just means over the past few weeks, Salah has been outperforming him in all the data sets, bar goals and attempted assists, is that a goal assist, sorry, and crosses. Both of those last 2 categories on naught, interestingly. You can't imagine Erling Haaland putting in too many crosses. Now, Palmer, I think, is a really good captaincy shout, but Everton defensively, despite them, being down the bottom end of the league, they've kept a lot of clean sheets. They're not one of the bottom teams for XG conceded, so I think it might be a little bit more of a difficult task. And for me personally, I prefer these 2 as captaincy options for this week. Now, both do have European football in midweek, so we might see some rotation, potentially some early substitutions from both of these players. But if I had to pick one right now, obviously, I think a lot of people are going to go for Erling Haaland, but Salah's stats are blowing him away in terms of shots on target, shots in the box, expected assists, expected goals. It's not even close over the past 5 game weeks for a majority of these stats. Crystal Palace as well defensively haven't been the best in terms of their form as well. They are right down there as one of the worst kind of out of form sides within the Premier League as well. You feel Liverpool will want to bounce back as well after that disappointment against Manchester United in that derby. Salah as well, I think he's looked okay. He's looked okay when you watch him, but it does feel like there should be more coming out of him. And I wasn't expecting his data to be this kind of dominant. I've been watching him because he's been my captain for 2-3 weeks now. And I watched him and I thought, I feel like there should be more kind of coming out of you here, mate. But at the same time, you're not having loads of opportunities. But maybe I've been not kind of paying attention to the game, because looking at this data set, it is phenomenal. The amount of shots he's having, the shots in the box as well, is absolutely ridiculous. Maybe Liverpool have changed something tactically as well. I noticed in the second half of the Manchester United game, Salah did end up kind of central, kind of playing in a 10 and 9, drifting between the two. So maybe this change in system or potentially change in formation for Liverpool or system or whatever they've done to replace Mohamed Salah is having a dramatic impact on his shots in the box as well, all the good stuff. So making him, I think personally, the top captaincy option for this week. Now it will depend what minutes each of these players does play in midweek in their respective European competitions, because if Erling Haaland plays 45 minutes, I feel he's going to be the sensible captain to go for this week. But, you know, if he doesn't, he plays a large proportion of the game, maybe Salah only sees 60 minutes, I think that offers him up as the better captaincy option. Let me know what you think around kind of captaincy this game week. I'm personally sat on Salah, but let me know which way you're thinking down in the comments section. If you've got any questions about your team or any of the data we did cover in today's video, leave it in the comments as I will try to answer every single question. But thank you very much for watching today, ladies and gentlemen, and good luck this game week.